Welcome to the Hidden Homestead. My name is David, and today we're going to clean my everyday carry, Glock 48. All right, guys, thanks for joining me today as we go through the cycle of operations and then field strip and clean my everyday carry, the Glock 48. Before we get into it though, I gotta make a quick disclaimer. I am not a professional firearm instructor. Topics discussed throughout this video are based on my limited knowledge and or research used to complete the assignments given to me by Sonoran Dessert Institute. This video is strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only. Do not attempt to replicate the actions featured in this video without the proper training. That being said, we are not going to get too detailed into this video as I have to stay within the time constraints and the parameters of the assignment itself. All right, with that out of the way, allow me a few seconds to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is HiddenHomesteadStore.com. That's right, HiddenHomesteadStore.com has t-shirts, hats, all kinds of other different merch, stuff that we make in the workshop, and we also have beard oil. So thank you, HiddenHomesteadStore.com, for sponsoring today's video. All right, before we get started, I want to point out that my workspace is clutter-free and void of any live ammunition. There's no live ammunition anywhere around here. The second thing we want to do is make sure to clear our firearm itself. Now, this firearm is a Glock 48, and like most polymer framed firearms, they're going to be about the same. So you want to drop that magazine to make sure there are no live rounds in it. Looks good to me. No live rounds. We want to visually and physically inspect the chamber to make sure there are no rounds in there. We're good. Send that slide forward, point the firearm in a safe direction, and pull the trigger. This firearm is now safe and clear. However, don't get all nimbly-bimbly and flag someone. You want to treat this firearm as if it is always loaded. So we're going to go over the 8 steps of the cycle of operation, and I'm going to talk about the different components that are involved in those 8 steps. Now, understand you might not be able to see them from this camera angle, so after we break this firearm down, after we field strip and start cleaning it, I'll go over those components a little bit more in detail. So the first step is the feeding process, because you need a live round before you can even fire. So what is involved in the feeding process? Well, the magazine for sure, because that's where your live rounds are, and the breech face. Directly underneath the breech face is the feed rail, and then on the backside of your barrel, on the barrel lug, is your feed ramp. Basically what happens as the slide comes forward, that feed rail comes in contact with the top round in the magazine, top back of the round, and it starts pushing the round forward onto the feed ramp. Now, as the slide continues forward, it comes in contact with the round, the cartridge comes in contact with the breech face itself and continues pushing it until it is chambered. Now, the chambering process, the step for the chambering process is just the step where the the cartridge is fully seated within the chamber, and that is the chamber itself, the round, and the breech face. The breech face is what pushed that cartridge into the chamber. Now, next is locking. So as all this has been happening, this slide has been going forward, and you might not be able to see it on this camera angle, but again, I will turn the camera a little bit, and then you'll be able to see it a little bit later. But as this slide goes forward, it pushes the barrel. There's a little the grooves on the barrel. It pushes it up out of the locking block. And again, I'll show you that here in a little bit. But as it pushes it up out of the locking block, it slides up into, engages the top of the slide itself. So now this barrel is locked. It's not going anywhere until a little bit later on the unlocking process. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit after the firing. Now, the firing and the cocking on a Glock kind of go hand in hand. I'll explain them. They're a little different on a Glock because a Glock is technically, what do they call it? Safe action. It is technically a double action. Even though it's a striker firearm, it is technically a double action. So to fire this, you got the trigger, you got the trigger bar, you have the sear, the firing pin spring, all that kind of cool stuff. So what ends up happening is right now it is semi-cocked. The reason it is semi-cocked is because it's their safe action. This firing pin can only, it can only be fully cocked or fired when you pull the trigger back. So as you pull the trigger back, it pushes that trigger bar back, engages the sear, which continue pushing the firing pin fully, all the way back. Once it gets all the way back, that sear pin drops and the firing pin goes forward, striking the primer and setting off the actual cartridge. So that is the firing. On unlocking, again, we'll talk about the whole cocking process here in just a little bit more. But the unlocking process is the exact opposite. Once that round has been left or started going the barrel, the recoil process, it is super hot in here. I am sweating so bad. So if I'm all out of sorts, that's why. So as the recoil starts, it starts pulling this slide back. And again, I don't know if the camera picks it up. I'll show you a little bit later. But as that slide goes back, it actually drops the barrel into that locking block, the grooves that slide down into the locking block, and it drops it down a little bit, and the slide ends up going over top of the barrel itself. Now it is unlocked. Then the extraction of the spent cartridge. So right here there is an extractor hook, and that is connected or hooked to the extractor groove machined into the back of the casing itself. As the slide moves back, it pulls that spent casing or spent cartridge out of the chamber itself until it comes in contact with the ejector. Now the ejector is machined in there. It doesn't move, but as the slide moves back, it forces, because it's got a hold of it with the ejector, it forces that case into that ejector, and the ejector pushes on one side as the extractor pulls on the other, and that's why it flips out, up, and to the right when it leaves the firearm. Now again, with the cocking, at this point right here, you would think on most firearms, it's gone through the cocked process. As this firearm goes forward, it brings the firing pin partially along with it. Right about there, the firing pin stops and the slide continues to go. And the reason they do that is because, again, for the whole drop safe, and it's just another safety built into the Glocks. Again, to fully cock this thing, it is partially cocked right now, but to fully cock this thing, you do have to take that trigger up. There is a little bit of in there. You can always tell it on a Glock. And that is me pulling the trigger back and continuing that cocking process. And it is the same components that is involved in the firing process. Now that we went through that, we're gonna break this firearm down. We're gonna do a field strip and then do a quick clean. I'm gonna readjust the camera so that we can talk a little bit more about those components that I just talked about. So to break this firearm down, remove the magazine, pull the slide back just a little bit on either side. There's these breakdown tabs. Pull those down and separate. I forgot one step. You got to pull the trigger. You got to pull the trigger to release everything. So now I'm going to pull it back, pull down those tabs. I feel like an ATF agent. Good Lord. Here we go. Wow. I felt real dumb. So we got our frame. We have our recoil spring and guide rod, and our barrel, and then the slide. And this is what we're going to be cleaning and servicing along with the magazine. So I'm going to reposition the camera, wipe my brow because I'm sweating like crazy, and we're going to start cleaning this thing. All right, we got this firearm field stripped down to the major components. This is the farthest that we're going to break this firearm down, so we're not going to do a super deep clean on it. But yeah, this is the major component. So I like to have just a couple of rags to wipe everything down. We've got some lube, CLP. Obviously, there's a couple different CLPs you can use. All your cleaning materials ready to go. So the first thing I like to do is just take each one, just take a rag, and then just wipe it down real quick, just to get some of the major build up. Just the loose stuff. Just kind of wipe everything down super quick. This just gets any dirt and dust and grime that might be built up on it. Just kind of knock that out of the way, and then I can actually start cleaning it. So just take a slide. You can see, so as far as what I was talking about earlier, obviously the trigger's down here, the trigger bar is here. The extractor, or excuse me, the ejector rod is right here. If you can kind of, there you go. You can see that the excuse me, the ejector is right here. So as that slide comes back, the extractor is hooked onto the spent round or the spent cartridge, and it pulls it back into this ejector rod, and then that's where the cartridge gets flipped out. So let's do a quick clean on this. And so all we're going to really do is just grab our, a lot of this stuff actually, thank you SDI, a lot of this was actually sent by SDI. So that's pretty cool. Some of the stuff I already had. So I'm just putting this carbon destroyer on here and just kind of brush it in. Just get all that carbon and fouling off of there. Just get all the nastiness. Now again, this is my everyday carry, so there's a lot of dust, there's a lot of grime, there's a lot of dead skin flakes that gets in there. It gets pretty gross. So just do a quick, like I said, it's just a field strip clean, so we're not getting a super clean. It's not super dirty, but I like to get down in here where the trigger comes in, just get all that brushed and scrubbed just to get rid of any of the carbon buildup. Kind of just wipe out the inside here. Get back on it. I keep hitting it. I don't know if you hear that, so I'll just mention. So right here is that those tabs for the takedown. It's right here, and then that lock block. Once I get this cleaned, I'll show you. But that lock block is right here, and that's what guides that barrel lug down into, and that's what assists in the lock and unlocking process. So something else I like to do with these, I like to have the cans for this. I can just spray it down in there, and it just kind of gets down in there a little easier. So it's up to you, whichever one you want to use. This is just a CLP, so nothing crazy. I kind of like the spray ones just because I can force it down in instead of just dropping it. To me, it just kind of, the aerosol, the pressurized can actually, it does help blast some of the gunk out. So I do kind of like that. So I'm just scrubbing this out. Not like super thoroughly clean. Just get in what nooks and crannies you can get. This firearm, this 48 wasn't like super dirty anyway. I cleaned it the last time I was at the range last week. So not too bad. All right, so now I'm just going to wipe it down. Just do a quick wipe down. Now the outside does get a little dirty and grimy because again, I carry it all the time. So if you're super concerned about it, just spray it down too. Just get that gunk. It's stippled. I got stippling on it. Just scrub the stippling. Get that gunk out of there. It's got dirt. It's got grime. Get the trigger inside the trigger well. A lot of times there's a lot of dust that gets in here. So I just like to kind of get in there. Good enough. I'll clean the barrel next and show you how that locks up. If I'm really doing, a super thorough clean, I'll actually spray it out with the air compressor. And I probably will before I load it back up, but the air compressor is actually in the garage. The one in the workshop is not with us any longer, so that's good enough for now. So let's go ahead and do the barrel. So really what you want to pay attention to for the barrel is the feeding ramp, because that can get a lot of carbon buildup and it won't feed properly. So I'm just going to dab some on there, get it and let it set. That way it kind of starts building up. Let's just do the same thing to the recoil spring and the guide rod. Just put some on there. Brush it. Again, this firearm is not that dirty. It's just not so much carbon and you know, fouling. It's just gunk from me wearing it all the time mainly. Cool. Good enough. So, grab this guy. I'll just kind of scrub. Make sure to get that. You can tell if there's carbon buildup. You'll be able to actually see it on there. I mean, I'm looking at metal surface right now. It's not too bad. And then, yeah, just clean out your barrel. Just get rid of some of the gunk that's on the outside here. For the sake of time, I'm probably not going to do like a crazy thorough cleaning. I got to make this video shorter than 8 minutes. I'm probably already past that. So again, just spray it down. Get in there. Scrub your breech face. And so this right here, you can see that. Kind of see that right there, that rail. That's the feed rail that I was talking about, just underneath the breech here. That feed rail is what comes in contact with the back top side of your round and starts the process pushing it forward into or onto the feed ramp. Now right here is the back bottom side of the firing pin. And as mentioned before, this right here is partially cocked. It will slide further back. So it's partially cocked right now. As the trigger is pulled back, it goes into the fully cocked position. Its light is picking that up. Yeah. Fully cocked position, and then the seared drop, and then that fire pin goes forward. So again, I'm just kind of scrubbing this whole thing down because I know it's got a bunch of dust and grime on it. Not so much carbon. It's pretty good. And then I also try to get right here where the extractor is, just because that sees quite a bit of carbon buildup as well. Okay, so we'll wipe this down. Again, time constraint, so I'm not super clean. I'll go back after the end of the video and finish cleaning it up. All right, so the only thing left to do is to do a quick lubrication. And I like putting it right here on my slide rail. Nothing crazy. I'll throw a little bit right there in the firing pin, a little bit right there. And I'll lube up a little bit. I don't get crazy with this stuff, but I do lube up the trigger some. Take the recoil spring and guide rod and go ahead and lube it up. And I like to just kind of lube this area right here where they come in contact with the barrel comes in contact with the slide. Most of this I'll end up wiping off, but I like to get it on there. All right, so I'm going to show you real quick how this, before I completely put it back together, I'm going to show you real quick how it locks, because it's a little easier to show you when it's apart. So as you can see, these grooves cut into the barrel lug sits right here in front of the lock block. So as it sits right here, the slide starts going back and it pulls. You can see it sets down the barrel sets down and the front tilts upwards. That allows for an easier feed. It kind of positions that feed ramp closer to the front of the projectile. As the slide comes forward, it pushes the barrel down and pulls it up out of that lock block with those grooves, and now it's in the lock position. So I'll put it together real quick and I'll show you what that looks like a little better up close and personal. So now you can see it is locked right now. As the slide goes backwards, you can see that barrel dropping down inside of that lock block, where the lock block was, that slot. And then the slide comes on back over top of the barrel, and as it moves forward, pushes it just a little bit to push up, and now it is in the lock position. At this point, once I get it oiled, I just run it quite a bit and then do a function check. Obviously, point the firearm in a safe direction. And that reset. Pull the trigger, rack the slide, slowly let go of the trigger, and wait for that reset. This firearm is clean and ready to go. All right, guys, that's it. Quick dive into my Glock 48, my everyday carry. Hopefully you liked this video. If you did, give me that thumbs up button. If you didn't like it, go ahead and hit that thumbs down button and then tell me in the comments below why you think I'm so stupid. I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons. Anyway, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we are on Patreon. Thank you. Oh, thank you to my Patreons. I love you guys. You guys support the channel so much. You're so cool. You're so awesome. Thank you for everything that you do. I think that's it. That's all I got for you. Oh, hey, subscribe. That'd be awesome if you did that, because that helps out the channel. Can't forget to say that. That's it. Peace out, guys. Talk to you next time.